and learning process. Managing the teaching and learning process. It's missing something there. It says managing the teaching and learning process. Okay? Well, when we talk about managing the teaching and learning process, what we refer is that, okay, you know English as a teacher, right? You know English, you know some methodologies about how to teach English. You know, you have your lesson plan, right, in order to go and give your class, right? You know some strategies, you have some techniques about giving your class, and now it's time that you go to the classroom and you do the magic with your students, right? That you manage your class appropriately, right? That you manage your class appropriately. So imagine, ladies and gentlemen, and well, managing your class appropriately means managing everything in the class, right? The students, the materials, the resources that you have in the classroom. For example, let's say the TV, the computer, everything that you have in the classroom, right? So managing the teaching and learning process is how you manage all those resources in order for your students to learn. Okay? Now, how do we do this? Well, how do you do it, ladies and gentlemen? Imagine that it is the first day of classes. The first day of classes is the first day of classes in the school where you work. First of all, you are all teachers, right? Is anybody here not a teacher? Are you all teachers? Yes, excellent. So imagine that you are in the classroom, right? Imagine that you are in the classroom, you are there, and then in the classroom, you are with your students, and it's the first day of the whole school year, and you start your class, right? And probably you start your class introducing yourself, right? You say your name, right? Probably you have one activity with your students, right? And this activity, you want to get to know your students. You ask them for their names. What else? Is there anything else that you guys do in the classroom when you start your class? Is there any specific activity that you always do at the beginning of the school year? What do you do? How do you start the school year with your students? In order to have an efficient work with them, do you have any specific strategies to start the school year? What are you talking about? Okay, you give an introduction of the whole program. That's good. Probably you give a description, right? Oh, we're going to talk about this and that, right? In some schools, they call this the encuadre, right? I don't know. Do you ladies have any other idea? Okay, probably Karina has a good idea. Probably she talks about the expectation of the students, right? Probably you ask them, what are your expectations? Why are you here? What are you planning to learn this school year, right? You also give some rules, right? You give some rules like, in my class, I like it this way. I don't like this. I prefer that. All right. Alejandro says, sometimes I'm trying to be friendly. Okay, so he tries to be friendly. Probably you play a game. I'm just waiting for one more answer, two more answers. Rocio says, build self-confidence, reflect about importance of learning the language. Okay, that's pretty good, right? Probably you can reflect like, oh, why do you think learning English is important? In your opinion, what are you going to do with the language in the future? Okay, all of those are excellent, excellent ideas, right? But something important, really important that we have to do either with basic, intermediate, or even advanced students is that we have to establish, right, some functions of the language in order to have communication, right? I bet that the majority of you do it, right? Probably right now is none of the answers that I receive, but I bet that the majority of you do it. I bet that the majority of you, the first day of classes, set some useful language that the students can use in order to approach you or in order to approach another student. This one probably you do it more likely with the basic groups, right? Most likely with the basic groups. What useful language? Well, probably you give some useful language like, okay, if you want to go to the bathroom, you need to say, may I go to the bathroom, right? If you're coming back from the bathroom, you need to say, may I come in? Right? If you want to ask a question, you say, I have a question, teacher. If you want me to repeat, you say, can you repeat this? Can you repeat that? Right? So all of those phrases that you and your students use in the classroom are called useful language, right? Those useful language, useful. Sorry, let me make it lowercase. Useful language. And that useful language, we most of the time express it through very simple exponents, right? What is an exponent? An exponent is a piece of language. Sorry, it's not properly written. An exponent, it's a piece of language which represents a function. What is a function? A function, mhm, a function is the reason to communicate something, right? For example, if you want to ask for permission, that is a function. Asking for permission is a function. Mhm. Let's say something more easier, something less complicated. Asking for clarification. If your students need to ask for clarification, this asking for clarification is a function. What do your students need to say when they ask you for clarification? What do they need to say? Tell me something they need to say when they ask for clarification. How do you say? Can I ask you a question? Can you explain that to me? Right. All of this that you are writing here, can you repeat? Yes. All of these that you are writing here are called exponents, right? All of these are called exponents. The exponents are the phrases that we use in order to express A function. A function is the reason to say something, the reason to use the language. Okay, there are different functions that students use in the classroom, and different functions that teachers use in the classroom. First of all, we need to understand that as teachers, we need to work professionally, right? The functions, the exponents, both of them, functions and exponents, have also some register. Mhm. Register. What is the register? The register is the level of formality in a phrase. As a teacher, your language in the classroom, do you think your language in the classroom has to be formal, informal, or neutral? What do you think as a teacher? Okay, the language in the classroom doesn't have to deal, the language in the classroom doesn't have to deal with the speed, or doesn't have to deal, the register, better said, doesn't have to deal with the speed of a speech, doesn't have to deal with your level. The register deals with the level of formality, right? So your language can be, your register can be formal, informal, and neutral, right? As teachers, we need to try to speak neutral or formal. But of course, we need to avoid informal language, right? Why? Because we are teachers, right? We are professionals. We need to speak appropriately to our students. We cannot speak inappropriately to our students, okay? For example, look at this. Mhm. Here, I have some phrases that the teachers, some teachers in a different part of the world used. I want you to help me. I want you to help me. We're going to read these phrases, okay? And I want you to tell me if you consider this phrase is appropriate or inappropriate for a teacher, okay? For example, it says, the teacher said to a class of elementary, secondary students. Elementary is the level, right? Elementary is the level. Secondary, well, is the grade, right? For example, elementary means that they are basic. Secondary means that they are in middle school, right? So the teacher says, please tell me your names. Do you think that phrase, please tell me your names, do you think this phrase is appropriate or is not appropriate to be used as a teacher? Yes. Alejandro says, yes, it is appropriate. Karina says, yes, too. Cynthia says, yes. And Rocio says, yes. Why do you think it is appropriate? Why? Because it uses please. The word please means politeness. All right, right. Well, yes, it certainly says please, right? It's simple, but it's also polite. Exactly, Karina. Karina has said something important because we are saying these are elementary level students, right? It means that they are at basic level. When we talk to basic level students, we need to grade our language. Grade our language means that probably you have a very good English level. Probably your language is a C2 level, a C1 level, right? But when you are with basic students, it is important that you lower your level and that you speak with chunks of information, right? With phrases, with collocations, that they are not very structured, that they are not very advanced, and the students can understand. Simple phrases, as Karina says, but they are also polite, right? For example, please tell me your names is something understandable, it's easy, and it's neutral, it's polite. It doesn't have like a lot of fancy words. So the number two says set to an adult elementary learner. So this is an adult student, but it's the same. It's a basic student. And the teacher says, I believe that your hard work has really produced results. Congratulations. Do you think this is appropriate or inappropriate? Alejandro says inappropriate, to advance. I don't know if you can say inappropriate. You say inappropriate, but I don't know. I don't think inappropriate is correct. It's not appropriate. Better. Yeah. Yes, this is inappropriate at all, right? The language is difficult. This is an elementary, a basic student, and the teacher says, "Your hard work has really produced results." The student is gonna be like, "What? What? What is this teacher trying to say? What? I don't understand." Right? Probably the student is not going to understand hard work. Probably is not going to understand has really produced results. So it's not appropriate. It's very formal. It's good. It doesn't have grammar mistakes. It's just that the language is too advanced, as Alejandro said, for the students. All right. In the number three, we have set to teenage intermediate students. So these are teenagers and they are intermediate level. Mhm. And then the teacher says, you clever boy, your mommy will be pleased with your mark. Right? You clever boy, your mommy will be pleased with your mark. Do you think this is appropriate or inappropriate? Yes, Angeli. Yes, you're right, Angeli. That's true, right? The language sounds very childish, right? It sounds very childish. It sounds more for kids, right? Because it says your mommy, right? Imagine you tell a teenager student, "Oh, your mommy will be pleased." The teenager student would say, "Like what? Who's gonna tell my mommy? I don't want you to talk to my mommy," right? So the language is very childish, and it's also needs more formality, right? Do any of you teach English in secondary school, or has any of you taught English in secondary? Alejandro says yes. When you teach English in secondary school, when you teach English in secondary school, you know that they are really restless, right? They are really restless. And teenagers tend to misbehave, right? Sometimes they are really misrespectful with the teachers, right? So if you as a teacher speak informally to the students, well, The teenagers think, oh, this teacher is nice, this teacher is relaxed, and they start misrespecting you, right? They start speaking informally to you, right? And since they speak informal to you, then they start misbehaving in the class. So with teenagers, you need to be very careful. You need to set limits, right, with your teenagers and tell them, you know, I am the teacher at all times, right? And try to speak more formally. Sometimes the students want to call me Mario. Hey, Mario. Hey, Mario. Here is my homework. And I tell them, I'm sorry, but for you, I am Mr. Chavez, right? I'm not Mario, right? So that is very important to create a good relationship with the students. As teachers, it's important that we are approachable. Do you understand the word approachable? Yes? No? Yes. Thank you. Yes, approachable is that, right? That the students feel confident, that the students feel that they can talk to you, that the students feel they can ask you questions. You need to be approachable, right? They need to feel you like something that they can approach for information, for questions, for doubts, but you also need to remain your authority, right? Because if not, well, then you're going to start having troubles. But don't worry, we're going to talk about how to solve or some advices about how to deal with discipline in the classroom. We're going to talk about that, but later. Right now, we're going to finish this. Okay? All right. Okay, so we said that is inappropriate. The number 4 says, set to a group 9 to 10-year-old intermediate students. And the teacher says, while it is possible to use the past tense here, it's much more common and simple. Sorry. While it is possible to use the past tense here, and natural to use present simple instead. It's much more common and natural to use the present simple instead. Look at the sentence. While it is possible to use the past tense here, it's much more natural, much more common and natural to use the present simple instead. What do you think? Is this appropriate? 10, 9 years students, intermediate level? Probably the level is not a problem, right? Probably the level is not like the students don't understand the words. Probably they understand the words. The problem here is the language, right? The students are 9 years. Imagine that you talk to a 9-year-old child like that. The child is gonna be like, what is this person talking about, right? What are you saying? I don't know, right? Probably the children don't know what does past tense means or present simple, or they still don't recognize it, right? So when you're talking to children, probably you would like to speak with more simple phrases. Yes. Thank you very much. The number 5 says, set to a group of advanced adults, business students. Business. So this means that it's not any type of adult. They are business. They are training to talk to customers, to give presentations. And the teacher says, what excellent work. You really have been very, very good students. Of course, right? You have, as a teacher, you need to speak more Professional, right? That is very informal, right? Probably you can tell your business student something like, good job, good job, you're trying really hard, and very soon you are going to be speaking English, right? Or good job, or excellent job, I like your participation today, right? Try to speak more formal, right? All right, the next one says, said to an elementary adult student, this work is awful, careless, and poor quality. Don't do it again. I know, do it again. This reminds me about a program that I was checking yesterday, which was about positive and negative feedback, right? It is better when we give positive feedback. All of the time is better that we give positive feedback rather than to give negative feedback. That is a very good strategy. Positive feedback encourages the student's improvement way more than negative feedback. Critics are good. Feedback is better, right? When you criticize somebody's job, you just mark the mistakes. When you give feedback, you tell the student how he can or she can improve. This is only criticizing the students' work, but it's not giving any ideas, right? So I think this is inappropriate, and as many of you said, is very rude. Is very rude, right? The student might be demotivated. Probably the student might say, "No, I'm not gonna do it again. I don't want to work anymore," right? Or probably the student will say, "The teacher, I she doesn't like me," or something like that. Set to, let's see the number seven, set to a group of teenage intermediate students. Could you get into groups and check your answers? Hello, Nazaria, and check your answers together. Right. It sounds very appropriate, right? The language sounds very appropriate. It's simple. It's for the intermediate, so no problem. And they are teenagers. They can do it. Set to a group of secondary beginners. Just get into groups and do the writing. What do you think? They are beginners, right? Yeah, it's very inappropriate. It's very inappropriate. The language is okay. Probably they understand the language. The problem, right, is that the instructions are not clear and the language is very informal, right? I just get into groups, do the writing. Students are like, what? What? Who? Right? Who am I going to work with? What am I going to write about? Right? The instructions have to be more explicit, right, for your students, especially for beginner students. And of course, you would like to try more formal language. Number nine, said to a group of primary and intermediate students, color the picture for homework and write the names of the objects under each picture. Okay? Primary school, right? Remember, primary school. Color the pictures for homeworks and write the names of objects under each picture. You think it's appropriate? Yeah. Wow, Alejandro says it's appropriate. Rocio says inappropriate. Oh my goodness. We have a debate here. Angeli says it does. Angeli, one person said appropriate, the other said inappropriate. What do you mean? All right, all right. Now the majority says appropriate. Angeli says appropriate too. Yeah, I also think. Right? Remember, this is for homework. Well, it needs to be probably your answer is okay, Alejandro. But the teacher is trying to give some homework, right? Basic level. This is intermediate level, Cynthia. Is intermediate level. Says primary, intermediate. Mhm. Okay, the teacher is confirming, right? Is confirming. Is saying, okay, do you understand? Okay, right? Okay, you got it, right? That's why the teacher says okay. Mhm. I think it's okay. Yeah, probably the okay can change. The teacher can say doubts, questions. Is it okay? Problems? You got it, right? Probably the teacher can change that last word, but in general, I think the instructions are clear. Color the pictures for homework. Of course, the students must have the book, right? And they can see it, right? And the teacher can say, color the pictures for homework. Write the names under each picture. Okay? Right? It's primary. It's primary, as Karina said. And finally, said to an adult student who is very shy. The student is very shy. Okay, stand up and sing us the song. It's very inappropriate. Yeah, right. Because since the student is very shy, if the student, right, probably makes mistakes, or if a student is not used to sing, or the student is not used to do this type of activities because he's very shy, he's going to feel very uncomfortable, right? He's going to feel very uncomfortable. And then, probably he's going to be embarrassed, and probably, right, he's going to feel very demotivated because he's singing the song, right? I don't think that would be a very good idea, that if you have a shy student, you have that student singing a song in front of the group. Probably you can find another activity for those students who are very introvert, right? Excellent, good job, thank you very much, everyone. So, as we are saying, there are different things, different phrases, different functions that the teachers can use in the classroom, right? This topic is part of the module 3. I don't know if someone is the first time who is here. Remember that all these topics are taken from our TKT preparation course. And this module belongs to the TKT module 3 from University of Cambridge. So using language appropriately for a range of classroom functions. Let's read this. It says using language appropriately means we use language in the classroom which best suits the situation. Here are some classroom functions that are often used by the teacher. Some examples. For example, the teacher of the teacher use the language for giving instructions, which is instructing, right? When the teacher gives instructions, the language of instructions is often imperative, especially for beginners, right? Stand up, sit down, raise your hand, open your book, right? Open the door, close the door, right? Things like that. Another function that the teachers use in the classroom are explaining, which is giving explanations. We might explain to learners how to do an activity, how to organize a project, the meaning of vocabulary, or why correction is needed. Mhm. Another function in the classroom for the teacher is narrating. Narrating is telling a story or talking about something that has happened. Another function in the classroom is eliciting. This is when we get information from our learners rather than giving it to them. For example, if I tell you, eh, for example, let's say that I want to talk about cities in Mexico, a beautiful city in Mexico. Instead of me giving you examples, instead of me telling you, guys, have you visited this beautiful city, Real del Monte in Hidalgo? Have you visited that city? Instead of I'm giving you the information, I tell you, hey guys, do you know any beautiful cities in Mexico? What beautiful cities do you know? What magic towns do you know? And you tell me, oh, teacher, I know this place, San Miguel de Allende. It's beautiful. Oh, perfect. And then another person says, oh, teacher, I know this place, Real del Monte. Beautiful. I know this other place, Tasco del Arcom. Beautiful. Okay. So instead of me giving you the examples, you give me the examples. Another example is, for example, let's say that I'm talking about uh, things I like to do, and probably I give you examples like, I like to play soccer every day, and I write it on the board. And I say, I like swimming, and I write it on the board. Eliciting is, what do you like to do? And you say, oh, teacher, I like swimming. And another, and I write it, right? And another says, I like listening to music. And another says, I like this. You see? A listening is that when you ask your students for information in order to get examples that you need for something, okay, for something in the class, that is called eliciting. So far so good. Everyone got the meaning of eliciting? Yes. Great. Another function that we use as teacher is prompting. What is prompting? We do it many times, right? For example, right? Sometimes the student says something, no? Like, for example, you ask the student, hey, fulanito, what do you do in your free time? And fulanito, the student, says, play soccer. But you are a teacher and you want complete complete answers. You don't want the student to say play soccer. You want the students to say the complete answer, right? So you tell the student, I, right? You give the student a clue. You give the student the beginning of the sentence. Sometimes it's the beginning of the word, right? So you tell the student, I, and the student says, ah, I play soccer in my free time, right? Mhm. Sometimes you tell the student, for example, hey, how do you say, how do you say, it's just an example. How do you say borrador in English? Fulanito, right? And Fulanito says, your student Fulanito says, I don't know, teacher. How do you say borrador? I don't know. I don't know. And you help the student. You tell the student, and the student, eraser. Yes. That is prompting. Okay. Prompting, this is when we say something to help learners think of ideas or to remember a word or phrase by giving them a part of it. You see? All right. Another function that we use in the classroom as teachers is correcting students. We can correct learners by using the language to indicate where or how they have made a mistake. There are many ways to correct students. In a little bit, we're going to talk about different strategies, different techniques that we can use to correct our students in a little bit. Don't worry, like we're going to talk about that in depth. Checking learning. Checking learning. We check learning all the time during our lesson, but we do this more often after we have presented and at the end of a lesson to give us information for planning the next lesson. We can use concept questions. Concept questions. For example, I want to check that my students understood the topic, and probably I am working with a simple past. So I ask my students, how many types of verbs do we have? That is a concept question. And my student says, two. And I says, which verbs are added easy? And my student say, regular verbs. And then I said, what is the auxiliary verb that we used in past? And my students say, did, right? I am checking learning and I am using concept questions. You see? Good. Finally, we have the last one says convey meaning. Convey meaning. For example, right? One of my students, when we convey meaning, we show the meaning of new words or structures. You sometimes convey meaning when you point at something, right? For example, your student says, teacher, what is a lamp? A lamp, right? Let me write it here. What is a lamp? And you have a lamp at your desk, like me, and you say, look, this is a lamp. You see? A lamp. Okay? And the students say, oh, thank you, teacher. Right? Sometimes you have flashcards, right? Sometimes you have flashcards, and then, or sometimes you have a computer, or sometimes you can do it with your own cell phone, right? And the student says, teacher, what is cucumber? Right? What is cucumber? And you tell the student, this is a cucumber, right? You are conveying meaning. That's how we call it. Convey meaning. You show the picture, student sees the picture and he says, oh, I understand. Thank you, teacher, right? Convey meaning. If you don't show the picture or if you don't point to the object, that is not convey meaning. If you give the meaning, if you describe the object, you are explaining, right? You're not conveying meaning. Convey meaning, you need to show it. You need to point at it. You need to show it. That would be conveying meaning. Okay? Those are some of the functions of language that we use in the classroom. Okay. We're going to try this activity. Let me see. Okay, we have purposes for using the student's first language. Look at this. Sometimes we can use only English in the class. But sometimes, especially with basic students, you use Spanish in your class. It depends on your beliefs and it depends on your approach. It also depends on your methodology, right? But imagine that you use Spanish in your class because you are in Mexico and Spanish is our first language, right? So, what is the purpose for that? Look at this. It says the teacher is asking students to show they know what to do for homework, right? He tells the student, the teacher tells the student, what are you going to do for homework? Tell me in Spanish. Why does the teacher do that? To check understanding? To explain the procedure? To motivate? A, B, or C? What do you think? Yeah, good job. Is that or A? Good job. All right, the teacher is given individual written feedback to a weak student. So you have a student who's very low level, makes a lot of mistakes. So you give feedback in Spanish. You tell you need to improve. I know you can do it. What's the purpose? Yes, very good. Motivating. Encouraging elementary students to try new ways of learning. So you tell your students, guys, you can watch movies, you can listen to music, you can talk to your friends in English. Yeah, that's true. It's motivating. Telling a large group of teenagers the rules of a game. Yes, that's true. Explaining procedures. Asking students to translate the meaning of new words. Yes, right. That is checking understanding. Good job. And the last one. Showing a group of beginners exactly how to use a self-access center. Do you understand self-access center? A self-access center, well, it depends, right? Sometimes some schools have it. Sometimes some schools don't have it. So, but a self-access center is a center where the majority of the work that the students do is in a computer, right? In this center, in this place, they have computers and the students can go and they can practice, right? They can practice in special software that the school has, right? They can practice on the internet, right? Or they can chat, they can have video conference, things like that. That is a self-access center. The majority of the work that the students do is in the computer, and it's like that technology. Good. All right. Would you set rules in the classroom in their first language? Who won't? I guess like unless you are teaching kindergarten in United States. If you are teaching kindergarten in United States, well, you can do it in English. But if you are teaching English in Mexico, it's important, right? There is some information, right, that needs to be clear, and some of this information is rules, right? I usually tell my students that the first day of classes, I always speak Spanish the first half an hour because I give them the functions, I give them the rules, right? And that information is important. It's important that they understand it, right? We make agreements. Okay, well, as I said, different schools have different methodologies. Different schools have different approaches. We, at the end, we are teachers, and at the end, we work for somebody. Somebody pay us, right? And we are teachers, but we are also employees. So we need to follow the rules in our schools. Sometimes we think it's not okay, but if the school says you need to do it like that, what can you do? You need to do it like that. And Jelly says, maybe just all those rules can be with an image. Of course, in kindergarten, all of the time, in elementary school, all of the time, you need to show pictures, images. Not only kindergarten and elementary, you have to continue doing for your adults because it's part of their multiple intelligences and learning styles. It is important that you convey meaning with images. Conveying meaning, you remember showing what I'm trying to say with pictures. That is very important. But of course, as we mentioned here, right, sometimes we use the first language, right, because we want to check understand, we want to explain procedures, or we want to motivate, right? And I guess, in my opinion, probably your principal has another opinion, and it's okay. I respect his opinion. Well, sometimes it's important to set rules in Spanish. For example, you call attention to your students in English and they are basic level, and you tell them, oh no, you're doing bad, don't do that. Sometimes they don't understand, right? So sometimes it's important to speak Spanish, but well, it depends on your school. It depends on your school, the methodology and the approach. Let's get going. Mhm. Key concepts about these functions. The language we use in the classroom must be appropriate for the classroom function and for the level and age of learners. So you need to pay attention to the level of your student and the age of your student. You need to grade your level. You need to speak. It's probably softer, probably slower. The most important is that you are understandable, that your students understand you. We need to grade our language to suit the language level and the age of the learners. Grade the language means choosing in the classroom language that is at or below the student's level. At or below, no more. You need to choose language that is at or below, right? If you want your students to learn, you need to use language that is just a little above. You cannot go that far, right? You cannot go that far, right? So you're going to be a little above, just giving them, providing them with more language, but not a lot of language, just a little above. Linguistics say that the language of the teacher needs to be equals to the language of the students plus one. That's it. One, not two, not three. One. It means just one step ahead, just a little more. The language of the teacher needs to be equals to the language of the student plus one. We need to sequence our language appropriately so that you give your rules, that you give your instructions, your explanations on the right sequence. To provide learners with learning opportunities, sequencing the language means using the language in a logical order. Okay? So all of this were functions for the teacher's language. But what about the students? Wow! What is the purpose for the students to use the language in the classroom? These functions are purposes of which learners use language in the classroom. They can be many from the beginning to the end of the lesson, including taking part in a task, grading, asking questions, interacting with each other, asking for clarification, checking information, understanding, saying goodbye, etc. Those are some of the functions the students use in the classroom. Learners need to know special words or phrases for certain games and activities. It is important that as a teacher, when you are going to play a game, when you are going to give an activity, that you provide the students with the language they're going to need. Mhm. You provide them with examples. That is going to save time. That is going to save a lot of time and a lot of problems, right? We need to teach them a wide range of learners' classroom functions and also teaching them to understand a range of teacher classroom functions. As I was telling you at the beginning, right? Sometimes when you start your classes at the beginning of the year, it is important that you provide them with chunks, with phrases that they can use to communicate with you and with others. This language is not usually taught in the course book, so when planning a task or activity, we also need to think about the language we will use. For example, sometimes with my students, I want to play this game. This game is called Find Someone Who. Have you played this game? Excellent, good job. So you write find someone who, and you write some sentences like the beginning of the sentence. For example, likes chocolate. Uh-huh. Uh, dances salsa. Uh-huh. Uh, plays golf. Uh-huh. Drives a bochito. No, a bochito no. Rides a bike. Very good. Okay. So I do this. I write it on the board and I tell my students and I explain them the activity. When I was starting to teach, I have been teaching English for 16 years. And when I started, it was difficult. For me, the activity was very easy, right? I understood it very easily. But I used to write it on the board and tell my students, okay, you're going to stand up and you're going to ask your partner if they like chocolate, if they like salsa, if they dance salsa, if they play golf, if they ride a bike. If they say yes, you're going to write the name on these lines, right? But then I used to finish explaining and then I used to tell my student, okay, stand up, everyone. Feel the magic of this beautiful class today. Let's do it. And my students used to stand up and look around like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I don't know. I don't know, right? So it is important that you provide your students with examples, right? Example language, especially. For example, that you tell your students, well, you need to go and you need to do it. As a teacher, you need to do it. You need to stand up. Go to your student and tell your student, your classmate. For example, you tell your classmate, do you like chocolate? Mhm. And then your classmate says, yes, I do. Oh, he says, no, I don't. If he says yes, then you write his name or her name here. You write Luis, right? Likes chocolate. And then you go to another person. Do you then say, yes, I do. No, I don't. If she says yes, you write the name. Wendy. And then you go to another person and then you do it and you repeat it. Got it? Yes. Let's do it. Right? So you provide the example language to your students and you provide examples of the activity. This saves time and avoids many mistakes during the activity. It's very important. Mhm. Well, yes, I don't say that they don't do it by themselves. Remember, I am not saying, oh, they're not going to do it. They are going to do it. What I said is that you need to provide examples, especially at basic levels. You need to provide examples. Now, these examples doesn't have to deal with the multiple intelligences and they neither have to deal with the learning styles. This is just to save time and to avoid mistakes, right? Yes, they do it, but you need to show them. All right. All right. This language is not usually taught. All right. Perfect. Excellent. Let's get going, everyone. Mhm. Thank goodness I changed the slides here. Here. Categorizing learner mistakes. So, in this first part, we talk about the reason to communicate. Now, it's very important that us as teacher have different strategies, a compilation of strategies that we can use to correct our learners. But first of all, if we want to correct our learners, if we want to correct our students, we need to understand their types of mistakes, their mistakes, and the reason for those mistakes. Mistakes show problems, either with accuracy or communication. These mistakes can be categorized in oral, accuracy, appropriacy, or graded mistakes. It makes learners lose motivation if we correct every mistake they make. We need to make sure our corrections are appropriate for the level and learning style of the learner and for the focus of the task. All right, listen up. All right. First of all, we need to identify where we are, right? Where are you? Basic level, intermediate, advanced level. Basic level. Okay, basic level. In basic level, you guys as teachers, elementary school, kindergarten, very basic students, what for you is more important to develop? Three options. Listen, three options. Number one, accuracy. Accuracy means students speak perfectly, no mistakes. Number two, pronunciation. Pronunciation means students have a good pronunciation, they don't make mistakes. Number three, motivation. Motivation means that the students like the class. What do you think is more what is more important for you? What is the most important? Yes, I totally agree. The most important is the motivation. A student who is not motivated is a student who is not going to learn, right? Motivated students motivate. Mhm. Sorry, motivated students learn. Not motivated students don't learn, right? No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you try, no matter what activities you try, motivation is really important, right? So, if you want to motivate your students, you need to approach your students in a good way, right? If Trini says communication, I'm going to their training. Wait a second. I'm going to there. Okay. So if you correct all the mistakes your students make, your students, sorry, before that, your students, when you have them right in your classroom, and it's the first time you have them in the classroom, what percentage of your students like English? What do they say? Do all of them like it, or some of them don't, or what percentage? Like the 50%. Yes, right. Some students like it, some students don't. Some students says I like it. Three says only 10% like English. That's very bad, Trini. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Yeah, right. Some students said, no, I don't like English. Some students said, I'm not good for English. Some students said, English is not for me. I will never learn, right? Some student says, you know what? I don't know why to study English. I'm not gonna use it. Never in my life. Mhm. They study because it's just necessary for graduations, or because it's part of the curriculum, right, of the school, right? Okay. So they feel like that. And then you as a teacher are like, no, you don't say it like that. You say it like this. No, don't do it like that. No, boom. And you are correcting the student all the time. What happens? The students feel more demotivated. So it's not really appropriate to correct all the mistakes. In basic levels, it is important to correct mistakes. Yes. What mistakes are we going to correct? What mistakes? Oh, the most important mistakes that we are going to correct are the mistakes which prevent communication. Mhm. It is important to correct our students, yes, but it's also important to give them the chance to communicate, right? It's important. You need to decide in what moment of your class you, Trini says, sorry, tell them. Okay, catch the rotation. Okay, Trini, I'm going to continue explaining, okay? As I was saying. Eh, okay, you need to decide, right? You need to decide, okay, what am I working with in my activities? For example, you need to decide in this activity, what do I want to improve in my students? Pronunciation, excellent. So it's an oral activity, and I'm going to focus on pronunciation. And then, in that case, you're going to pay attention to your students' mistakes and correct their pronunciation. And then you say, oh, in this other activity, I'm going to correct grammar, and you focus on grammar. In this other activity, I'm going to correct intonation, and you focus on intonation. In this other activity, what I mean, the human brain cannot pay attention to many things at a time. It is better if you focus at different things at different times. So it is better if instead of correcting all the mistakes your students make, you focus on certain mistakes at different times, right? You can tell your students, okay, guys, we're going to have this oral activity, this speaking activity, and we're going to try to do our best pronunciation. I'm going to walk around the classroom and I'm going to listen to you. There is another thing that is important here. If you want to work with fluency, you are not going to interrupt your students, right? You're going to let them go. And when they finish, you are going to correct them. If you're going to work with accuracy, well, probably you're going to interrupt them, right, at every time. But for you, ladies and gentlemen, what is more difficult to develop? What is more difficult to develop in your students? Fluency or accuracy? Yes, we are talking about speaking training. In speaking, fluency or accuracy? Fluency, says Rocio. Nazaria says fluency. Alejandro says fluency. Trini says accuracy. Trini gives different ideas. It is tested, right, that the most difficult to develop in the majority of the students, according to Cambridge examinations, it is fluency, right? Fluency. Many students know the rules. Many students have the vocabulary. Many students, but they have it here, not here, right? They think and think and think, but they don't say it, right? Sometimes they hesitate. Sometimes they correct themselves. Sometimes they struggle to speak or they speak very slow. So, since fluency, it's more difficult for the students, well, at the basic levels especially, you need to make them feel confident with the language. And you need to work on fluency. It's a good idea that you don't interrupt them, that you monitor them, and you make notes. And at the end of the activity, you tell the students, these are your mistakes, right? Instead of interrupting them at every time, right? Okay. Now, accuracy, Trini and Jelly. Accuracy is pretty important too. When we think, when you speak, do you have the chance to think about what you're going to say? When you speak, do you have the time to think about everything you are going to say? No, right? You speak, you are thinking and speaking at the same time, right? It's a process that happens really fast, right? Boom, boom. And it's natural to make mistakes. It is natural to make mistakes. Students need to understand this. Students need to understand that mistakes are natural part of learning. Even native speakers, yes, well, we are native speakers of Spanish and we make mistakes in Spanish, right? So it's natural that we make mistakes. So mistakes, errors are natural part of a student's learning, right? They are natural part of a student's learning. It's natural that they make mistakes. When we work on accuracy, we need to point out the mistakes, but we want that our students reflect on the type of mistakes. The most difficult is that your students identify the mistakes by themselves. But if they identify the mistake by themselves, then they can correct it by themselves. And that's the most difficult. But I'm going to show you a strategy right now. Okay, we can encourage them. Okay, it is also good for the students. Let's read this. So we go to one activity. It is good for our students be aware of their mistakes and correct them by themselves. We can encourage them to do so by using correction codes for written mistakes. So they know what type of mistakes they made, and so they can look for it and correct it, right? So it is important that we use some correction codes, right? I'm going to show you right now a correction code and how it works. Let me finish this. There are different reasons for mistakes that learners make. The reason why mistakes are made influences the way we correct them. Mistakes can be very positive aspect of learning. They show us that learning is taking place and the learners are taking risks with the language. If students are not making mistakes, they are not learning. Why not? Because if they are not making mistakes, they are not taking the risk. They're not taking the risk of using the language. They're in their comfort zone and they're just using basic language they feel comfortable with. When they take the risk and use more advanced language, they make mistakes. And that shows us that they are learning, right? The learning is taking place. Okay? Perfect. Okay, let's analyze this. All right, it's not this. Wait, it's not this. Okay, everyone. Look at this. Here on the screen, you can see types of mistakes, right? You can see some types of mistakes. First of all, I'm going to write on the board a sentence. This sentence has a mistake. First of all, what I want you to do is that you look at the sentence and you tell me the mistake. Okay? Look at the sentence and tell me the mistake. Okay? I am is a mistake. Okay. It should be, instead of I am, it should be I like, right? No am, right? Only I like, right? Okay. Now, what type of mistake is this? We have here some types of mistakes. Ground verb pattern, ground comparative, ground tense, ground pronoun, ground preposition, ground subject verb agreement, ground relative, missing auxiliary, missing preposition, ground adverb, unnecessary auxiliary, ground word order. What type of mistake do you think it is? I'm gonna scroll it up, but don't worry. If you want, what I can do, just give me a sec. I'm going to share it. This is going to be better for you. It's a name. Let me see. Mistakes one. Okay, look. I'm going to share it. You can download it to your computers. Okay, the type of mistakes, ladies and gentlemen, is unnecessary auxiliary verb. Right, this is the type of mistake. Unnecessary auxiliary verb. Because it's not bare pattern. Because here, in this sentence, you don't need it. It's not a verb pattern because you don't need another verb. You don't need any other verb. You don't need that word at all. So this word is unnecessary. You don't need this auxiliary verb. Remember, the verb to be is also an auxiliary verb, right? Or can be also an auxiliary verb. So here you don't need am, you don't need any verb at all. You don't need any auxiliary verb. So this one was unnecessary auxiliary verb. Mhm, mhm. Okay, another. Let's see another example. Oh, sorry, I'm missing country. There you go. Every festival are different in my country. So the problem is are. You say the problem is are. Instead of are should be is, right? Instead of are should be is. Now, what type of mistake is this? Mhm. Word, wrong verb pattern, wrong comparative, wrong test, wrong pronoun, wrong preposition, wrong subject verb agreement, wrong relative, missing auxiliary, missing preposition, wrong adverb, wrong word order. Wrong subject verb agreement. Rocio says wrong subject verb agreement. Thank you, Nazaria and Rocio. Your answer is true. Yes, very good job. Wrong subject verb agreement. Because this is what? Every festival is what? Is singular. And this is plural. So it's not correct. The verb and the subject don't match. If the verb, is the subject is singular, the verb should be for singular. If the subject is plural, it has to be for plural. So wrong subject verb agreement. Mhm. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, let's try another one. Let's see. We must to protect the environment. Yeah, the two, right? It should be we must protect, right? Okay. What is the type of mistake? Verb pattern, comparative, word tense, wrong pronoun, wrong preposition, wrong relative pronoun. The ones we use cannot be repeated, okay? Missing auxiliary, missing preposition, wrong verb, adverb, sorry, wrong word order. What do you think? Verb pattern, letter A. Wrong preposition, says Alejandro. Wrong preposition, says Trini and Alejandro. The answer, ladies and gentlemen, is wrong verb pattern, right? It's not wrong preposition. Why not? Because you don't need this preposition. The verb pattern With must is must and the verb in simple form. That's it. It's like in past perfect, the verb pattern is have and the verb in past participle. Sorry, have. Present perfect, the verb pattern is have and the verb in past participle. Right? With can is verb, can, the modal verb can, and the verb, right? Note in infinitive and no in ing. It's only the verb in simple form. So this one is must and verb in simple form. So the answer here is wrong verb pattern. It's not in infinitive. Okay, let's try another one. Another one. Okay. What time did you say you going out later? Oh my goodness. Erase it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There you go. What is the mistake? First of all, yes, it's missing R, right? It's missing R. What time did you say you are, right? You are going out later. Okay. And then what type of mistake is this? Alejandro says missing auxiliary verb. H. Rocio says H2. What do you think? C or H? L. Wrong word order. No, it's not about the word order because we don't have the R. It's missing the R. So since it is missing the R, yes. Yes, Alejandro, in Angeli, and Cynthia, and Trini are correct. H, missing auxiliary verb. That is the mistake. Very good. Mhm. Okay. Okay. I'm showing you this, or we are doing this because this way you can identify the mistakes, the type of mistakes, the purpose of the mistake, so you can put it in a correction code. I'm going to show you a correction code in a little bit too. I'm going to wear my leather red jacket. My leather, my red leather, says Trini. What is the mistake? What do you think? Yes, you agree with Trini? Red leather? Yes. Yes, it should be red leather. Since it should be red leather, what type of mistake is this? The L. The I. Missing preposition. No, we are not missing. Ah, the L. Oh, okay. Yes. Wrong word order. Yes, that's right. Wrong word order. Number 7. Number 6. This is the 6. Let's see this. Let's see this. Let's see. Let me move it because you cannot see it complete. Okay. Better. It's not better, right? Should be worse, right? The weather in London is worse than the weather in Tokyo, right? What type of mistake? Easy. Yes, very easy. Wrong comparative form. Good job, everyone. Wrong comparative form. Okay. Next. Almost done. I just want to show you some more. This activity. Let me see. Look at this. I go to the cinema last week. Yeah, right. It's a wrong tense. It should be I went to the cinema, right? Yes, good job. You got it. You got the idea. At the beginning it was hard, but now you got it. Good job. Okay. Next. Okay, let's see. He worked very hardly to finish the project. There's a problem there. Hardly, right? You don't say very hardly. Yeah, you don't say that. So what's the type of mistake? Grown adverb form. Yes. Yes, good job. Good job. Okay. Let's see. Next. There you go. What is the mistake here? What is the mistake, ladies and gentlemen? What is the mistake? You. How should it be, Trini? Instead of you. Yourself. Don't blame yourself. Wow. Trini, you're very, very smart. So, since it should be yourself, from here, right? Because the three first ones are already answered. Relative pronoun. Guys, yourself is not a relative pronoun. The relative pronouns is not an object pronoun either. It's a reflexive pronoun. Reflexive pronoun. Yes, Cynthia. Yes, Angeli is letter D. You got confused, Alex and Trini, with the word relative. What's relative? You mean what? You mean what are the relative pronouns, right? The relative pronouns are the ones that we use when we say, for example, hey, that is the school where I study. Or when you say, he is the person whose daughter is in my classroom, right? And when you say, that is what I am talking about. W is, yeah, some of them are WH questions, but also can be, these, that, these, those also. Relative adjectives too. The reference about a person or a noun we are talking about. Yes, Trini, but your definition applies for all the pronouns, not only for the relative pronouns. But it's okay. You got the idea. You got the idea. But yeah, actually, your definition applies for all the pronouns, but the relative pronouns are why, where, when, which, whose, whom, who, these, that, those. Mhm. Yes. Mhm. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's get going with the next. When we use them, no, when they substitute, no, connectors are other part of the speech training. When we use them as pronouns, when we use them to refer to a noun previously mentioned, a pronoun, it's a word that substitutes a noun, right? So when we use these words as pronouns in order to substitute a noun, they are relative pronouns. Those words in specific are called relative pronouns. Okay? No other pronouns. That's what I say that your definition applies to all the pronouns. Okay, this is the next. They've been away since a long time. What do you think is a mistake there, teachers? Since, right? We might say for, right? What type of mistake is this? Yes, Rocio, thank you. Is that, yes, Cynthia, yes, Trini, yes, Alejandro. It is the Grom preposition. We have only two more. Two more. Let's see. What do you think about this? Listening. Listening is the problem? I don't think listening is the problem. It's missing something, right? What is missing? Two, right? Yes. No, I like listening to. I like listening to. The problem is that it's missing to. So you say, I like listening to classical music. And then the type of mistake is that it's missing a preposition. It's missing a preposition. And of course, the last one is wrong relative pronoun. The last one is that. The example is this. Okay, this the ground relative pronoun. The ground relative pronoun is who. It should be that must be the dress which or that you bought last week. Ground relative pronoun. Thank you, Nazaria. Ground relative pronoun. Okay, so of course, all of these sentences, some of them are basic, some of them are intermediate, some of them are advanced. You, as a teacher, can identify them. But it is important that you also train your students to identify them, right? Why is it important to train your students to identify them? Because sometimes students are lazy, right? For example, when they do writing activities, you tell them to write something. Who corrects it? Most of the time, teachers corrects it. Sometimes you tell your students, you have a mistake here, you have a mistake here, there. And the students don't see the mistake. And they don't see the mistake because, well, they sometimes cannot identify it. Or sometimes they don't see the purpose of identifying it, right? So it is important that you use correction codes, that you tell them you're missing a preposition. Instead of telling them you need to say it with to, right? Or you tell them is the wrong pronoun. Or you tell them the verbs don't belong that way or it has the wrong agreement, right? When you work with writing, you can just underline the mistakes and use a correction code. For example, let me show you a correction code. Here I have a correction code. This correction code is very complete. This is for more intermediate to advanced students. Can work for basic too. For example, you use some symbols like this, right? To mark your students' mistakes. Instead of telling them, okay, it should be like this, you tell them you have a spelling mistake here, and they correct the spelling mistake by themselves. So you train them to identify and correct the mistakes by themselves, which is the most important. You have incorrect spelling, wrong word order, wrong form, wrong word, wrong tense, singular plural form wrong, something is missing, something is not necessary, meaning is not clear, punctuation is wrong, new paragraph needed, good work sentence. Okay, this is good, or this is a good sentence, this is a good work. Okay, so this correction code can help your students identify mistakes easier and correct the mistakes by themselves. Okay, I can send you this picture if you want. You can design your own code. For example, I prefer colors. I prefer colors rather than letters. Um, I don't know. I think like probably my students are more visual. I don't know. I think that when they see colors, they can correct their mistakes easily. So instead of using this correction code, I underline with different colors, and this is the correction code I use, right? With colors, right? Purple, red. It is important that you let your students know, right, what every color means. Of course, with basic students, with children, probably you're going to focus, they are not going to produce large sentences, right? So probably the sentences are only spelling, or you don't understand, or you like the words are not formed properly, right? So the important thing is that the students understand why they have the mistake and what they need to correct, and that they correct it, not you, they correct it. Okay, you can use your own correction code. You can design it. You can do it on your personality with shapes, right? A heart, a star, a rainbow. I don't know, whatever you prefer. Okay. All right. So this works more for written language, right? But what about oral? What about oral mistakes? What about oral mistakes? Mhm. When we correct learners, we want to show them that something is wrong, and then we need to correct it. We can correct either oral or written. To do this, we use different techniques. For oral mistakes, you can use the timeline. Mhm. The timeline is really, really useful for me. I use it many times, especially with advanced levels, right? Or intermediate levels. For example, one topic that I have a lot of problems with my students is the present perfect and the past perfect. So I usually tell my students, look, for example, one of my students says, I, let's say that my student says, I visited. No, a common mistake is this. A common mistake is this. My student says, teacher, I finished. I just finished my homework. Mhm, I've just finished my homework, right? So the correct form of these should be I've just finished. That should be the correct form. So sometimes my students don't find any difference. They say, why? Why, teacher? I don't understand, right? I don't understand. I've just finished. I don't understand, right? Because in Spanish we say acabo de terminar, right? We don't make it. We not digo acabo de haber terminado, right? So I show my students a timeline like this, and I tell them, look, imagine this line right here. It's now, right? Imagine here is the past. Let's say 1 hour ago. And imagine here is the future. Let's say next week. Okay. You use the simple past when you talk about an activity completed in the past. For example, completed 1 hour ago, or half an hour ago, or 40 minutes ago. You use the simple past. You use the present perfect for an activity that you started at the past. I'm going to write here with black simple past. You use the present perfect for an activity that you started at the past. Mhm. But that activity is still relevant or is relevant in the present or continues or it's repeated until now, right? So you started that activity in the past, but probably it is repeated until now, or probably it continues happening until now, or probably it is still relevant now. Since you said I've just finished, it means that you started in the past and now you finished. Now. So it's relevant now. If you finish an hour ago, then you say I finished. But since you finished now, you say I've just finished. So the problem is on the use of the present perfect, right? Because sometimes the students don't understand when to use one, when to use the other, right? So I draw this and I show them this because many students are visual. Many students, I tell them and they don't get it. So when I throw it on the board, they get it. Present, perfect. And I draw it like this and I show it to them. Okay. All right. You understand more or less how it works. It works for many different things. They don't use it in the Spanish. We don't use it the same way. For example, the continuous tenses. No, I tell them the continuous tenses are for background or ongoing situations. Background. And I ask my students, what is background? And they say, I don't know, teacher. And I say, background is de fondo, right? They happen background. Están pasando de fondo. For example, let's say that yesterday, let me erase these things that I wrote. For example, I say, for example, imagine that yesterday, there was a blackout, right? There was a blackout, and that blackout happened at 3 p.m. yesterday, right? 3 p.m. yesterday, there was a blackout. Now, that is in past, right? Because it happened. But imagine that before the blackout, I went to the bathroom and I was taking a shower. And I took the shower and I was taking a shower, and then the blackout happened. But I was taking a shower. I continue taking a shower. I cannot go out, right? Like that with the soap. And I continue, right? So this happens as a background activity, right? When we talk about background activities, we use continuous tenses. So there was a blackout when I was taking a shower. So that's more or less how I use this technique. This is the timeline technique. Okay, let's see. Another is the finger correction. Sometimes you are at the back of the classroom and the student is at the front of the classroom, right? And you hear that the student makes a mistake, but you are very far, right? And you cannot go to the board because the board is on the other side. And you are like, oh my goodness, how can I correct that student? And the student says something, no? Let's say the student says, well, let's say, I, I don't know. Let's say that the student says something like, I, oh, they say, my parents are married. Married is very common, right? My parents are married. And then you hear that and you say, what? Married? No, you don't say married. So you tell, hey, fulanito, fulanito, right? And you show it with your fingers. My parents, look, you show it like this. My parents are married. My parents are married. Do you think so? No, right? Married. One more time. And then Fulanito says, my parents are married. Perfect. Sometimes they miss one word. For example, they say, I going to the movies. What? I going to, for example, I going to the movies? I going to? You're missing something here. What are you missing? Um, uh, I am, I am, I am going to the movies. Good. So you use your fingers, right? The problem is that you only have 5 fingers. But you can focus on the mistakes only with your fingers, right? You use your fingers, and that way you can correct your students. Okay, everyone. I'm really sorry, but it's 7 o'clock, and I have another workshop right now. It's another topic. So we are going to continue on Thursday, right? Same time, same place, right? Thursday. On Thursday, we're going to continue. We're going to see more strategies. We're going to see more techniques. And of course, we're going to see other new things. Okay? Well, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate your attendance. Yes, it's at 5 p.m. I really appreciate your attendance. And I'm going to send you this material so you can read it. And well, I hope to see you this Thursday at 5. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Yes, it has no extra cost. It has no extra cost. Well, as I know, but better, I guess, Nicte, if you need to cover any extra, well, probably Nicte will let you know, but I don't think it has any extra course. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening and see you on Thursday. Goodbye.